back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, my partner in crime in this fantasy game. It's Alex Lott. And look, one of the fun topics in our Discord channel, if you guys want to join the conversation with us, completely free to join. Just hit that link in the description down below. But we like talking about bold predictions in there. And today, Alex and I both have about 5 or 6 bold predictions we just want to throw out there. And if they hit, we're going to, clip these and replay them and show everyone how smart we are when it comes to projecting what's going to happen in the NFL, which I don't know how good that talent is for anything. But Alex, I'll have you go first. What's your first bold prediction for the 2021 season?
Man, you put a lot of pressure on. Hopefully we can hit on a couple of these. Honestly, this bold predictions episode, it's like, what are some of these outlier type of outcomes we could see happening? If we each hit on one of these, I think we'd call that a win on today's show. But regardless, it's going to show the people listening and watching, like, these are outcomes that we see as possible. Like, these are upside outcomes or downside outcomes. And maybe if we don't even hit the full potential of what we're talking about in some of these takes, even if they get 75% to these crazy bold predictions, it's going to mean a lot of really crucial things for fantasy football this year. So I'll get straight into my first take. It's that Tyreek Hill is the first wide receiver in NFL history to go for over 2,000 yards in a season. Calvin Johnson has the current record with somewhere around 1,900 yards, just over 1,900. So I'm looking at Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, and I'm saying, look, with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, with funneled volume to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, I really think he can get there. And I'm huge on Tyreek this year. He is my wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy football because he showed us last year that he can provide a floor in Kansas City with that touchdown upside. All of his targets are super valuable because he's getting these targets down the field. But the unique thing about Tyreek, he is one of, if not the only player in the NFL that we could see pop off for multiple 200, 250-yard games. And if Tyreek Hill can keep the same baseline that he had last season, to date in his career, and he can have 1 or 2, maybe even 3 of these games where he pops off for 200, 250, close to 300 yards, I think we could see him push that 2,000-yard mark and set a new NFL record. Obviously, the 17th game this year is going to help as well. But Tyreek Hill, first receiver in NFL history to go for 2,000-plus yards.
I love the spice on this one, and this is what we're talking about when we take Tyreek Hill and some of these mock drafts that we've been doing. We like him in the first round because of that just insane, unlimited upside potential being tied to Mahomes, being tied to the Chiefs offense, and being just the monster that he is downfield and with the ball in his hands. So love the hotness there, and that's the thing about bold predictions. It's like, if it doesn't make you a little bit uncomfortable throwing it out there, it's probably not bold enough. And mine actually might not be that hot to some people, but I believe it is very possible this season that Justin Fields and Mac Jones are both starting for their respective teams within the first 5 weeks of the season and both finish as fantasy football QB1s.
Wow.
And I'm hearing really good things about Fields in camp right now. Looks like from everything the team is saying, the reports that we're hearing is he is showing up Andy Dalton right now. And I'm sure that's not too tall of a task, to be honest with you, when you have a skill set like Justin Fields, ran that 4.51 40 time. He's 6'3", 227. I mean, freak athlete. He's bigger than Jalen Hurts. He's bigger than Ezekiel Elliott. And he was taken 11th overall in the draft. So he has the draft capital too. That's one of those things that does correlate to the production. And when we look at Fields as a player, he looks like the Russell Wilson type of profile. Just like a current day Russell Wilson is what he was in college, where his college yards per attempt were phenomenal. His college QBR was phenomenal. On top of that efficiency, he was able to put up 484 rushing yards as a sophomore, 383 rushing yards in the regular season in a 8-game COVID-restricted season, but put up monster numbers on the biggest stages in the college football playoffs. So if he gets that role, and this is one of the reasons why we're banging the table on drafting Justin Fields with one of your last picks, even if you took a quarterback earlier in the draft, I've been coming out a lot of these drafts with Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields and feeling great about it. But he's the exact type of upside QB you need to take from the same vein of guys like Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, And when we look at Mac Jones, I like what we saw from him in the preseason. Cam Newton's, to me, isn't that scary when you look at it. And in week 4, the Patriots play the Buccaneers, the Tom Brady revenge game, the Belichick revenge game in prime time. And it's an easy narrative to construct. Cam Newton could easily end up being the scapegoat. And now it's Mac Jones time. And he'd be able to come in and start against the Texans, the Cowboys, the Jets, right in his first 3 starts. So if I'm the Patriots, I'm trying to get Mac Jones ramped up this year. I don't think they're going to be winning a Super Bowl in any case. But with what Mac Jones did in the preseason, to me, he looked very similar to Baker Mayfield as a rookie, where he was setting the rookie record for passing touchdowns, looking very efficient, and being what you and I talked about Mac Jones to be coming in as a prospect, a very cerebral QB, a guy who can move around in the pocket, but isn't going to kill you at this speed, isn't really going to be a threat as a rusher, but nonetheless can get it done, can move around and make plays. Now, if we look at things that are happening currently in camp, not only just yesterday did we hear a report that Mac Jones is now taking reps with the first team offense, we also saw him look pretty good in the preseason game against the Washington football team. 13 of 19 completions for 87 yards, 2 rushes for no gain, but I think that's, and look, I'm not going to overreact to preseason stats, but if you go and just look at how Mac Jones was playing, it was pretty impressive to me, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. He was trying to push the ball downfield. Hopefully when all the ones are in there, you get Nelson Aguilar in there, Jonnu Smith in there. These guys can go out and produce for Mac Jones, and he can be that Baker Mayfield type of rookie and finish in that 12 to 10 range in fantasy.
Yeah, I like the pick. It's a very hot take in my opinion. You know, I think both of them starting by week 5 is hot enough, and then the QB1 finishes is taking it to the next level. But Steph, I'm going to keep it at the quarterback spot with my next bold prediction. It's that Russell Wilson finishes as the overall quarterback 1 in 2021. And I know this might not seem like a hot take to some, but when we look at Russell Wilson to date, like he's lacked that top tier upside because he hasn't had the volume throughout his career. His career high in pass attempts is 558, which he had last season. And historically, Russell's been this lower volume, higher efficiency quarterback that throws a lot of touchdowns and adds a little bit of a floor on the ground. And when we look at what happened in 2020, had that ridiculously hot start to the season, was the quarterback 1, and then they really scaled things back. He started to struggle, and they kind of limped down the stretch in 2020. And when I looked at 2021, you look at what this team did in the offseason. First of all, you had all those weird rumors about Russell Wilson wanting out of Seattle. So if anything, you know, I think that was more smoke than fire. But Russell could have said, hey, I want to have more of a say in this offense. I really want to open it up and pass the ball. He's got DK Metcalf. He's got Tyler Lockett. I know that's kind of narrative street, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Russell Wilson taking more control of the offense in 2021 and having his way throwing the football. And we also look at what Seattle did this offseason. They bring in pass-catching tight end Gerald Everett. They bring in Dwayne Eskridge at wide receiver with some key draft capital in the second round. So with Russell Wilson, I think we could see him really level it up in terms of pass attempts this season. He's going to continue to be efficient with his touchdowns. He adds the rushing floor. He gives you everything you want at the quarterback spot for fantasy football, except some of that consistency in previous years because of the volume concerns. But now if that volume's there will be no red flags with Russell, and he has that upside to finish as the overall quarterback 1.
It's completely in the range of outcomes. That's why we love Russell Wilson. He's in our, or at least in that top tier of quarterbacks. If you want to see us break down how you should treat the QB position in the single quarterback redraft leagues, go check out our perfect QB strategy video on our channel. But Alex, I'm going to keep the spice coming with the New England Patriots, and my bold prediction here is that Jonnu Smith jumps in to the top 5
Wow.
at the tight end position in fantasy points per game. That's over Mark Andrews. That's over Noah Fant. And I think Jonnu can firmly cement himself. If things break his way, if Mac Jones comes in, the volume goes up through the air for the New England Patriots, he could cement himself as that clear number 5 when we're looking at tight end rankings in Dynasty, in redraft going into next season, because Jonnu Smith is a freak athlete. And when we're looking at the overall volume for New England, it is slim pickings when it comes to targets. When you have Hunter Henry there competing for the same targets, but Hunter Henry already getting injured in camp, has a prolific injury history. I don't want to get into everything that's happened with him right now, but Johnny Smith, just like a guy that we like a Chase Edmonds, who has a James Conner to contend with. Johnny Smith really only has a Hunter Henry to contend with when it comes to tight end passing game targets in his offense. And then you look at what he did last year with a very, very run-first team. Tennessee Titans in 2020 were the third lowest in pass attempts on the season. And even though the target share wasn't necessarily large, I know he was splitting some targets with Anthony Ferkser at the tight end spot, and he was hurt, banged up, in and out of the lineup. Johnny Smith was still 11th in total yards after the catch. He was still top 5 in red zone targets with 18 of those. Actually ended up converting those into 9 touchdowns, which was number 3 at the position. So he has that red zone skill set. He is the freak athlete that can make plays with the ball in his hands, and this guy is just a monster on the field. Runs a 4.6 40-yard dash at 6'3", 248 pounds. Add in the third-round draft capital, and I like Jonnu Smith a lot this year, not only as a prospect when he was coming into the league, but now stepping into a new team at age 26. And this goes right in line with my Mac Jones take. If Mac Jones comes in, that passing game volume increases with Cam Newton out of there, or even if Cam Newton does take a step up in the passing game, has the fire lit under him, I'm expecting big things from Jonnu Smith this year. Love him in the super late double-digit rounds right now, and he's truly a flyer that you can take that does have that insane upside if some things break his way.
Love it. It's getting hotter and hotter with some of these takes you got, Steph, but I'm going to keep it at the tight end spot. I'm going to go with the rookie, Kyle Pitts. I know you've been fading him just based on where his ADP is right now, but I'm going to say that Kyle Pitts leads all tight ends in touchdowns in 2021 as a rookie. And a lot of this just comes down to a perfect situation for Pitts. We already know he's got the draft capital. He's got the athletic profile. I mean, he was the first of all, the earliest tight end ever drafted at 4th overall. And then we also have the fact that it was the first time in NFL history that a tight end was the first non-quarterback off the board, because the draft went Lawrence, Wilson, Trey Lance, and then it was Kyle Pitts, the best of the rest. So we know he has all this stuff going for him in terms of being an outlier as it is. And now we look at the situation in Atlanta, and there are so many targets for the taking with the departure of Julio Jones. Kyle Pitts should be maybe not the number 2 target in this offense. I think it's going to be Calvin Ridley number 1. Russell Gage would not surprise me if he was second on this team in targets, but Pitts should be a close third. I think he will be at 100 or more targets as a rookie. Ooh. And when we really think about the Atlanta Falcons in the past with Matt Ryan, something they've always struggled with is red zone efficiency. Calvin Ridley's been pretty good at scoring touchdowns, but it's an area where Julio Jones did not really excel. And now Kyle Pitts comes in as a perfect red zone threat for Matt Ryan, arguably the best red zone threat he's had in the last 5 or 6 years since Tony Gonzalez was there. But Kyle Pitts should come in and be targeted early and often in this offense, especially inside of the 20s. So that's why Kyle Pitts, to me, has a good chance to go for 10 or more touchdowns this season. And if he gets to 11, gets to 12, he could easily lead all tight ends in touchdowns for 2021.
Love that Pitts spice. And I mean, I remember having a heated debate in the draft process about Pitts. If he does the things that a lot of people are expecting him to do, if he delivers on his ADP in fantasy, I mean, he's going to do things at the tight end position for a rookie that we've never seen before. And that's totally within reason. If you look at who Pitts is as a prospect, he did things we've never seen before with his draft capital and with his college production as well. So I love the spice there. Pitts could easily be a top 3 tight end going into drafts next year. But I'm going to keep it with these rookies. And Alex, it's a guy that I've faded all dynasty season, but I'm actually in on him.
I can't believe this.
Looking at the redraft situation, we got to parse these things out. Look at things just for 2021, look at things long term. But my bold prediction is that Jaylen Waddle is the clear wide receiver 1 for the Miami Dolphins this entire season. And the reason I faded Jaylen Waddle in dynasties because he is really a black box when it comes to his prospect profile. We had his injury in that junior year. We never really saw that true monster breakout season, but we know Waddle's explosive. We know that he has greater size and speed than Henry Ruggs. If you like Jamar Chase joining Joe Burrow, you got to like Jaylen Waddle teaming up with his college quarterback in Tua. And that unknown in that prospect profile was the reason for my fade in Dynasty, especially where you had to take him in rookie drafts. But when we look in redraft, you can get Jaylen Waddle super, super, super late. And how much of a depth chart does he really have to climb? I mean, Will Fuller is probably a guy that I'm also in on at his ADP in redraft. But Fuller isn't exactly known for staying healthy and staying off the PEDs. We have Devontae Parker, who's descending in his career, also coming off an injury-riddled season. And look, he had that one flash with Ryan Fitzpatrick coming into the offense, but there's still a lot of question marks about Devontae Parker. Then it's Preston Williams, an undrafted guy that looked fine, but didn't really do much last year. Got hurt for the second year in a row last year. Lynn Bowden, Allen Hurns, Jakeem Grant, like none of those guys are at the prospect level. And all of the mystery in his college production actually could be a lot of upside in the unknown, as we like to say here on the channel. So look, am I going to project this? Do I think it's going to happen? No, but Jaylen Waddle being the wide receiver 1 would not surprise me at all, and truly could be one of those league winners off the waiver wire if he gets hot down the stretch in 2021.
It's crazy, man. You've come full circle on Jaylen Waddle, and that's what we got to do. As we get more information, as situations change, you always got to be flexible, and I love that pick. Obviously, I believe in him in Dynasty as well. We'll see what he ends up being. But, Steph, I'm going to go ahead and get into my first, bold prediction on today's show that is fading a player rather than hyping him up, and it's Mike Davis. Sorry, Mike, but my prediction here is that he finishes outside of the top 40 running backs. I think he is going to be borderline useless. I shouldn't say borderline useless. I think he's essentially going to be the Mark Ingram of this year. Might start okay, and I think he's going to fade, and I think he's going to fade fast. And it's crazy because I've seen him going as early as the 5th, 6th round in some of these drafts. And for some reason, I just can't quite get on board because we saw what he did last year in Carolina. Yes, he filled in admirably for Christian McCaffrey, but that was an offense and that was a system that targets the running backs, that manufactures plays for running backs to get the ball in open space. And it really sets them up for success. Christian McCaffrey, incredibly talented running back. But if Christian McCaffrey was in a different NFL system, it might not be the same. He still would be incredibly talented and make crazy, amazing plays, but he might not be this running back 1, clear-cut, by far running back 1 that he is in Carolina. So Mike Davis had everything going for him with the best running back system in the NFL that we've seen for fantasy football over the last couple of years in Carolina. And now he comes to an Atlanta team that was 31st in the NFL last year in yards per carry, only 3.7 yards per carry, just an incredibly inefficient situation. And I don't really want to bet on Mike Davis, a 29-year-old 4th-round running back who broke out in his age 27 season to come into an inefficient running team and to suddenly be great, especially when it's a guy that has below average speed and below average athleticism. He's a good veteran back who should be used in a support role, a situational role. But for Mike Davis to come in and just on paper to see, they have Mike Davis and no one else, and assume he's going to be the workhorse, I think that's just flawed logic. And I'll admit that early in the year, as things are getting ramped up, you might get some weeks out of him. He might be startable here or there as a flex, as an RB2. But on the whole, long term, when I look at the season, I just don't expect Mike Davis to hold up as a workhorse back. I don't think he's going to walk into workhorse volume. I think the volume that he's going to get is going to be incredibly inefficient from day one. So even some of that volume that you're getting isn't going to be as good as you think it is. And I just think the wheels could fall off for Mike Davis, and he could be one of those guys that's unstartable for the second half of the season. I mean, he only had 3.9 yards per carry himself in Carolina last year. So Mike Davis is someone I've been fading in a lot of drafts. Maybe you get some value out of him early on in the season, but for this bold prediction, I think he could definitely fall out of the top 40 at the position.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, and we did see that bright light burnout fast last year. Mike Davis down the stretch was not fun to have on your roster, especially if you had that sunk cost fallacy where you're like, look, he gave me good weeks for 4 straight weeks. I got to keep plugging him in, and it was just tough scene after tough scene. But Alex, I'm going to stay with the running back position. You're looking at the downside. I'll look at the upside on a running back and a guy that I'm seeing actually creep into the first round now, and I don't hate it. with Aaron Jones. And I've had bold predictions in the past about Aaron Jones. I thought he was going to repeat that top 3 performance in 2020 after that monster 2019 season where he had 16 touchdowns. But I'm going right back to the well with Aaron Jones because he was so close to being a top 3 name, finished 5th in PPR, 6th in PPR points per game last year. And with Aaron Jones, it just comes down to the touchdown upside. He got paid very, very good running back money. He got a 4-year, $48 million extension with the Packers. And that just tells me he should continue to have a secure role in this offense. You and I are really high on A.J. Dillon, but he can take those empty calorie, between the tackles type touches. Aaron Jones should still be heavily utilized in an efficient offense through the air. I saw 68 and 63 targets the last 2 seasons and should be a lock for over 200 carries. So now you're just banking on, look, this floor is here, and that's why we're taking him in the first round, but the upside presents itself if Aaron Jones can continue to be that goal line back that he's always been, be that guy who can break away big plays, take him to the house like we've seen him be for the last 2 seasons. I'm really, really high on Aaron Jones, and he's only 26 years old right now. A lot of people think of him as a lot older. So Aaron Jones back in the top 3 in 2021. Don't be surprised if it happens.
I was giving you a hard time for this pick last year, and you definitely got the final say there. So we'll see if it happens again in 2021. But Steph, with my final bold prediction on today's show, I'm going with DAndre Swift, who is a player I've been rising on tremendously, and I'm going to say he finishes as a top 5 running back in PPR formats for 2021. I'm going to say he has the full breakout this season, even though he is on a bad offense. And if we look at the ADP right now, DAndre Swift is actually going as the RB17. He finished as the RB18 last year, and that was in only 13 games as a rookie. He took some time to get ramped up as well. So when I look at DAndre Swift and this Detroit Lions team, there's nothing not to like about Swift as a player. He is tremendously talented on the ground, very athletic. He's going to be that guy that can get the ball into the end zone. And he has a great receiving skill set as well. 4.5 targets per game last season was fantastic. That receiving skill set and that receiving workload should remain constant, if not go up even more as we head into 2021. So that provides a nice floor for Swift, is the receiving work. But what really provides the upside is the work on the ground. Last year, he only saw 114 carries, and I had forgotten this, and it's really easy for other people to forget too. Adrian Peterson saw 156 carries for 600 yards and 7 touchdowns last year in Detroit. So with those carries gone, I know Jamal Williams is there to play a support role, but Kerryon Johnson vacates another 52 carries from Detroit. So I think there's going to be more opportunity and more volume for Swift on the ground, not only because of some of the vacated touches, but also because of just his own progression, stepping into year 2, being more trusted, being that lead guy, being that main back. So if we see Swift get to that 12 to 15 carry a game number, we see the receiving volume stay at 4 to 5 targets a game, he could quickly be one of these players that's in consideration for 1,500 total yards on the season with the reception totals. If he can over-index in touchdowns a little bit, push towards 10 total touchdowns, that could be enough to take him over the top to be a top 5 running back. The biggest concern with Swift is the Lions offense, but we've seen players in bad offenses produce for fantasy before. It's not something I always want to bet on. You have to look at the situation and the player very closely, but this is one of those cases where we could see Swift be one of those shining bright spots on a really bad team. We saw it from Gibson last year. Antonio Gibson was on a bad Washington offense, had double-digit touchdowns. James Robinson, exactly. So we've seen some of these situations where players can have double-digit touchdowns, have upside on bad teams, and I think Swift is one of those guys for 2021, and I have him in this bold prediction finishing as a top 5 running back.
People just love to overreact to bad offense or perceived bad offenses. They act like Jared Goff is just dust at this point. He's not, even though I don't think he'll be the starter long term. But Swift, I mean, I've put this out there, I think, on like Twitter before. Unless you're fading Christian McCaffrey because he's on the Panthers, you shouldn't be fading DAndre Swift because he's on the Lions.
Well said.
So
well said.
I'm going to stick with young, exciting upside running backs. And it's a guy that I took in our most recent 10-team PPR mock draft. I've taken him in other drafts. I love him in Dynasty, have him on almost every Dynasty roster. And it's Travis Etienne. I boldly predict him to finish as a top 12 fantasy football running back in 2021. He has the number one highest correlating factor for a running back on his side, which is draft capital. He was taken 25th overall in the first round. I know James Robinson is there, but look, teams don't go out and draft running backs in the first round if they're not going to use them. And with the things we're already hearing out of Jacksonville is that Travis Etienne is going to have that pass-catching third down role. And he's playing with his college QB who gave him a 12% target share last season, 5 targets per game. Even if that just remains steady. I mean, look at James Robinson last year had an 11.8 target share. David Montgomery, 12% last year. Miles Sanders, a guy that I comp very closely to Travis Etienne, 12.3% target share last year. And then you have names like DAndre Swift you just talked about, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Chase Edmonds. These are the type of guys that are getting very significant target shares in their offense. I think Etienne could slide into that role and then some because he's such a stud as a running back. He's so explosive. A lot of people compare him to like Alvin Kamara and DAndre Swift as well. And if you look at the comparison with Kamara, Etienne is 5'10", 215. Kamara is 5'10", 214. And Kamara has never exceeded 200 carries in a season, so we don't even need James Robinson to be totally removed from this offense for Etienne to go and put up monster points. If Etienne can just get like 150 carries, 4 or 5 targets a game, it's wheels up for me. He was one of the most efficient college running backs in the entire country. Had a 6.6 yard per carry, which is in the 87th percentile. Look, we know Etienne's explosive. He had back-to-back 1,600 rushing yard seasons, had 78 touchdowns in his college career, and got better as a patch catcher every single season, and it seems like that's the way he's going to be utilized. So give me an explosive pass-catching running back that comps to all these really, really fun, exciting fantasy options. Give me him in year one with an offense that could explode. We've been talking about Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark and all these guys that have upside on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Etienne fits right in there for me. Love him in drafts, and I think he could finish as an RB1, be a league winner this year.
One last fantastic bold prediction. I'm with you. I think Etienne's got the upside in these PPR leagues, especially if he gets into the end zone more times than we think. He's one of these guys that could be in a lot of lineups come playoff time, looking for those fantasy football championships. But Stef, that's going to do it on today's 10 bold predictions. Again, we'll see if one, if two, if any of these predictions come true this season. They're bold for a reason. These, again, aren't things we're necessarily projecting to happen, but we're saying they're in the range of outcomes. And if it happens, you know you heard it here first. But again, if you want to ask us more questions, join into the discussion, and just follow along with us throughout the season. Join the Discord channel. That is in the link in the description below. Steph and I are hanging out in there all the time, just chatting with you guys. Thanks again for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.